The coffee stain on her oversized cardigan had been there since Tuesday, but nobody at Hartwell & Associates seemed to notice. Nobody ever noticed Claire Morrison. That was exactly how she wanted it. She pushed her thick-framed glasses up the bridge of her nose as she shuffled through the marble lobby of the downtown office building, her deliberately scuffed loafers making soft, squeaking sounds against the polished floor. The cardigan hung past her hips, obscuring any hint of her figure beneath baggy khaki pants that pooled at her ankles. Her mousy brown hair was pulled back in a severe bun, not a strand out of place, held together with a plastic clip she'd bought at a drugstore for $2. Claire had perfected the art of invisibility over the past 10 years. Every morning she chose clothes 2 sizes too large from thrift stores, applied no makeup except for occasional smudges under her eyes to look perpetually tired, and kept her head down. In a company of 200 employees, she was the one person everyone forgot 5 minutes after meeting her. It hadn't always been this way. 10 years ago, Claire had been different. She'd worn designer dresses that hugged her curves, styled her naturally auburn hair in soft waves, and smiled with confidence that lit up every room she entered. She'd been engaged to Brandon Sterling, a charismatic investment banker whose family owned half the real estate in the city. They'd been the golden couple, photographed at charity galas, their engagement announcement featured in the society pages. Then came the party at the Sterling estate. Brandon's business associate, Marcus Webb, had cornered her in the library. She could still remember the smell of his expensive cologne mixing with whiskey on his breath, his hand on her arm, her clear rejection, his anger. The next morning, photos appeared online. Manipulated images of her in compromising positions with Marcus, time-stamped during the party. The captions painted her as a cheating opportunist who'd betrayed her fiancé. Brandon had believed the photos without question. His family's lawyers made sure she signed away any claim to anything connected to the Sterling name. Her own family, mortified by the scandal, had distanced themselves. She'd lost her job at a prominent marketing firm within a week. Claire learned that beauty made you a target. Visibility made you vulnerable. So she disappeared into a new identity, taking a modest position as a financial analyst at Hartwell & Associates, a mid-sized investment firm where nobody cared about her past, because nobody cared about her at all. She rode the elevator to the 14th floor, squeezing into the corner as young associates in sharp suits discussed their weekend plans. They talked around her, through her, as if she were part of the elevator's furniture. "Did you hear?" A woman named Brittany was saying, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her phone screen. "The company's been sold. New owner taking over today. About time," her companion replied. "Old man Hartwell hasn't innovated in a decade. We need fresh blood." Claire said nothing. Ownership changes meant restructuring, which meant potential layoffs, but she'd survived 3 rounds of cuts by being too unremarkable to consider. She was a line item on a spreadsheet, easily overlooked. The 14th floor buzzed with unusual energy. Assistants hurried past with stacks of documents. The managing partners emerged from their offices wearing expressions that ranged from nervous to hostile. Change was coming, and corporate veterans could smell it like blood in the water. Claire settled at her cubicle in the back corner, partially hidden by a filing cabinet. She booted up her ancient computer and opened the quarterly reports she'd been analyzing. Numbers had become her refuge. They were honest, predictable, safe. People lied and betrayed, but numbers simply existed. All staff meeting in the main conference room in 10 minutes, the announcement crackled over the intercom. Claire sighed, saved her work, and gathered her notepad. She always sat in the back during meetings, taking meticulous notes that nobody ever asked to see. It was part of her camouflage, appear busy, appear useful, but never appear important enough to target. The conference room filled quickly. Claire claimed her usual spot in the back corner, partially hidden behind a tall analyst named Greg, who always wore too much cologne. Through the gap between bodies, she could see the front of the room where the managing partners stood in a tense row, waiting. The double doors opened, and the energy in the room shifted. He walked in like he owned the place, which, Claire realized, he literally did now. Tall, with dark hair silvered at the temples, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her car. But it wasn't his appearance that made Claire's breath catch. It was the way he moved, the quiet confidence that came from someone who'd built an empire from nothing and had nothing left to prove. "Good morning," he said, his voice carrying easily across the room without needing to shout. "I'm Daniel Reeves. As of today, I'm the majority owner of this firm." Claire knew the name. Everyone in finance knew Daniel Reeves. He'd started with a single restaurant in Brooklyn 15 years ago and turned it into a hospitality empire spanning hotels, restaurants, and entertainment venues across 3 continents. His estimated net worth hovered around $4 billion, though he notoriously refused to discuss his finances publicly. He was known for 3 things: his business acumen, his philanthropy, and his absolute refusal to engage with the media circus that surrounded most billionaires. "I'm not here to gut the company," Daniel continued, his gray eyes scanning the room. "I'm here because I see potential that's been poorly managed. Over the next month, I'll be meeting with every department, every team, and yes, every individual employee. I want to understand what works, what doesn't, and what we need to change." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Individual meetings with a billionaire CEO? That was unprecedented. "I believe people are our greatest asset," Daniel said. "Not the ones who talk the loudest or dress the sharpest, but the ones who do the actual work. The ones who show up every day and keep this machine running." Claire felt an unfamiliar flutter in her chest and immediately suppressed it. She'd learned not to feel things. Feelings led to mistakes. "That's all for now," Daniel concluded. "You'll be receiving meeting schedules from my assistant. I look forward to getting to know each of you." As people began filing out, Claire moved to leave with the crowd. But something made her glance back. Daniel was standing near the front, speaking quietly with one of the managing partners. As if sensing her gaze, his eyes lifted and locked with hers across the room. The moment stretched. Claire felt exposed, as if those gray eyes could see through her oversized cardigan and smudged glasses to the person she'd buried 10 years ago. Then someone stepped between them, breaking the connection, and Claire hurried out. Back at her cubicle, her hands trembled slightly as she returned to her spreadsheets. She told herself it was anxiety about the meeting schedule, about having to speak to the new owner, about the potential for her carefully constructed invisibility to crack. But deep down, she knew it was something else. Something dangerous. That evening, as Claire packed her worn canvas bag, an email notification appeared on her screen. Her meeting with Daniel Reeves was scheduled for tomorrow at 2 p.m. She'd be the first analyst he'd meet with personally. Her stomach dropped. First meant memorable. First meant visible. First meant everything she'd worked 10 years to avoid. Claire arrived at work an hour early the next morning, though she'd barely slept. She'd spent the night second-guessing every detail of her appearance, finally settling on her usual uniform. A shapeless gray sweater with a small hole near the hem, brown corduroy pants that had seen better days, and her oldest pair of shoes. She'd even added her reading glasses over her regular contacts, giving herself an owlish, confused appearance. The office was nearly empty at 7 a.m., just the way she liked it. She made her instant coffee in the break room. She always refused the expensive espresso machine the company provided, and settled into her cubicle with her files. If she stayed busy enough, maybe she could forget about the 2 p.m. meeting that loomed over her like a storm cloud. But the morning dragged. Every time someone walked past her cubicle, she tensed, half expecting Daniel Reeves to appear early. She'd prepared a folder of her analysis work, the most boring technical reports she could find. If she buried him in numbers and jargon, maybe he'd cut the meeting short and she could fade back into obscurity. At 1:45, Claire's desk phone rang. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Ms. Morrison? Mr. Reeves is ready for you now. His office is on the executive floor, room 1601. The assistant's voice was crisp and professional. "Now? But the meeting isn't until 2, Mr. Reeves prefers to start meetings early. He finds it tells him something about people." The line clicked off. Claire grabbed her folder with shaking hands and made her way to the elevator. The executive floor was territory she'd only visited twice in 10 years, both times to deliver reports to someone's assistant. The carpet was thicker here, the artwork on the walls, original pieces rather than prints. Even the air smelled different, expensive and intimidating. Room 1601 had been Old Man Hartwell's office, a dark, wood-paneled cave filled with hunting trophies and cigar smoke. Claire knocked tentatively. "Come in." Daniel's voice called. She pushed open the door and stopped. The office had been completely transformed. The wood paneling was gone, replaced by floor-to-ceiling windows that flooded the space with natural light. The hunting trophies had been removed, the space now filled with modern furniture, bookshelves lined with well-worn volumes, and several large plants that somehow made the corporate space feel almost welcoming. Daniel stood by the window, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up. He turned as she entered, and Claire was struck again by the intelligence in his gray eyes. "Miss Morrison," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming early. I hope I didn't disrupt your schedule." "No, sir. I was just working." Claire perched on the edge of the chair, clutching her folder like a shield. "Please, call me Daniel." He sat across from her, not behind the massive desk, but in a matching chair, eliminating the power dynamic. "I've been reviewing files since 5 a.m. Yours was particularly interesting." Claire's heart hammered. "Interesting. Your analysis work is exceptional. The quarterly report you completed last month caught patterns that 3 senior analysts missed. You predicted the downtown retail slump 2 quarters before it happened." He leaned forward slightly. "So I have to ask, why are you still in a junior analyst position after 10 years? The question was direct, unexpected. Claire had prepared for technical questions, not personal ones. I'm comfortable where I am. I prefer working with numbers rather than people." "That's not what I asked." His voice was gentle but persistent. "You have an MBA from Columbia, top of your class. Before coming here, you worked at..." He glanced at a file, and Claire's blood ran cold. "You worked at Sterling & Associates for 2 years. Excellent performance reviews. Then you left rather abruptly." Claire's hands tightened on her folder. He'd done his research. Of course he had. Billionaires didn't buy companies without investigating everything. "Personal reasons," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I needed a change." Daniel studied her for a long moment. "I won't pry into your personal life, Claire, but I will say this. Talent like yours shouldn't be wasted in a back corner cubicle. I'm restructuring the entire analysis department. I want you to lead it." Claire's head snapped up. "What? No, I couldn't possibly." "Why not?" "Because leading meant visibility. Because visibility meant danger. Because 10 years ago, being noticed had destroyed her life. I'm not qualified," she managed. "There are senior analysts with more experience. With less skill," Daniel interrupted. "I've reviewed everyone's work. You're the best we have, and it's not even close." He paused. "Is it the salary? Because I'm prepared to offer..." "It's not about money." The words came out sharper than she intended. Claire took a breath, forcing herself back into her careful shell. "I'm sorry. I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy where I am. I prefer not to draw attention." Something flickered across Daniel's face. Not disappointment, but curiosity. He stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city. "I grew up in Brooklyn," he said suddenly. "My father worked 3 jobs. My mother cleaned houses. I was the kid with holes in his shoes and the same jacket every winter." He turned back to her. "When I started making money, really making money, people told me I needed to act the part. Expensive suits, fancy cars, the right restaurants. They said visibility was currency in business." Claire didn't know where he was going with this, but she found herself listening. "But I noticed something," Daniel continued. "The people who insisted most on being seen, on being important, were usually the ones with the least substance. The real talent, the people actually keeping businesses running, were often the ones nobody noticed." His eyes met hers, the ones who deliberately made themselves invisible. The air left Claire's lungs, he knew. Somehow he knew she was hiding. "I don't know what happened to you," Daniel said quietly, "and I won't ask. But I recognize someone who's built walls because the world hurt them. I've done it myself, just in different ways." He returned to his chair. "I'm not asking you to tear down those walls overnight. I'm asking you to consider that maybe you've been hiding from something that can't hurt you anymore." Claire's throat tightened. For the first time in 10 years, someone had looked at her, really looked at her, and seen past the camouflage. It was terrifying. It was dangerous. It was also, in some small way, a relief. "I need time," she heard herself say, "to think about it." "Take all the time you need," Daniel said. "The position will be open for 2 weeks. After that, I'll need an answer." He stood, extending his hand. "Thank you for your honest work, Claire. This company is better because of people like you." Claire shook his hand, noting the calluses on his palm, not the soft hands of someone born to wealth, but the worn hands of someone who'd built it himself. She fled the office before she could say anything else, her mind spinning. Back at her cubicle, she couldn't focus. Her carefully ordered world had tilted on its axis. Someone had noticed her. Someone had seen value in her. Someone had looked past the ugly clothes and dowdy appearance and found the person underneath. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a decade. Hope. That evening, as Claire left the building, she found Daniel in the lobby, talking to the night security guard. He was laughing at something the older man said, his entire demeanor relaxed and genuine. This wasn't a billionaire performing for cameras. This was someone who actually cared about the people around him. As if sensing her presence, Daniel looked up. Their eyes met across the lobby. He smiled, a small, genuine expression that crinkled the corners of his eyes. Claire ducked her head and hurried out into the evening, her heart pounding for reasons she refused to examine. But that night, alone in her small apartment, she did something she hadn't done in 10 years. She opened the locked drawer in her bedroom and pulled out an old photograph. It showed a different Claire, radiant in a red dress, her auburn hair cascading over her shoulders, laughing at something off camera. The woman in the photo looked happy, fearless, beautiful. Claire stared at the photograph until her vision blurred. Then she carefully placed it back in the drawer and locked it again. That Claire was gone, buried under a decade of protective ugliness. It was safer that way. But Daniel's words echoed in her mind as she tried to sleep. Maybe you've been hiding from something that can't hurt you anymore. What if he was right? The next 2 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Claire continued her work, but she couldn't stop thinking about Daniel's offer. Worse, she couldn't stop noticing Daniel himself. He was everywhere. In the break room making his own coffee and chatting with janitors, in the analysis department asking junior staff about their workflow, in the lobby at 7 a.m. and still there at 7 p.m. He wasn't performing the role of CEO. He was actually working, learning every aspect of the business he'd bought. And he kept finding reasons to talk to her. "Claire, do you have a moment?" He'd appear at her cubicle with questions about reports, always respectful, always genuinely interested in her insights. She'd answer in her carefully neutral voice, but she noticed things. The way he listened completely, never checking his phone or looking distracted. The way he remembered details from previous conversations, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, as if he saw something worth protecting. It was dangerous. She needed to shut it down. On Thursday of the second week, Claire arrived at work to find a formal invitation on her desk. The company was hosting a gala next month to celebrate the ownership transition. Attendance was mandatory for all employees. Black tie event at the Grand Meridian Hotel. Her hands trembled as she read it. A gala meant dresses, makeup, visibility. It meant being photographed. It meant the possibility of someone recognizing her from 10 years ago, of the whole painful scandal being resurrected. She couldn't go. She wouldn't. Claire was drafting an excuse email when her phone rang. Daniel's assistant. "Mr. Reeves would like to see you. Conference room B, please." Her stomach dropped, but she had no choice. She made her way to the small conference room, expecting another meeting about the department head position. Instead, she found Daniel standing by the window, his expression troubled. "Close the door, please," he said quietly. Claire did, her pulse quickening. Something was wrong. "I received an interesting email this morning," Daniel said, turning to face her, "from someone claiming to have information about one of my employees. About you, specifically." The room tilted. Claire gripped the back of a chair to steady herself. "The sender said they knew you from before, that you were hiding a scandalous past. They included some photographs." Daniel's jaw tightened. "They suggested I should reconsider any promotions for someone with your history." This was it. The moment she'd feared for 10 years. Claire's carefully constructed world was collapsing, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I see, she whispered, her voice breaking. I'll clear out my desk. Why would you do that? Claire looked up, confused. Daniel was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I had my IT team trace the email, he continued. It came from a Brandon Sterling. The name seemed familiar, so I did some research. Quite a wealthy family. His father owns Sterling Properties. He paused. I also found the photos that circulated 10 years ago, and I found something else. A very quiet lawsuit filed by a photographer against Marcus Webb for digital manipulation of images, settled out of court with a strict NDA. Claire's legs gave out. She sank into the chair, her vision swimming. You know? I know that someone doctored photos to destroy your reputation. I know your fiancé chose to believe lies rather than trust you. I know you've spent 10 years hiding from something that should have never happened to you in the first place. Daniel's voice was hard with barely controlled anger, but not at her. What I don't know is why Brandon Sterling is suddenly interested in you again after a decade. I don't understand, Claire said, her mind reeling. How did he even find me? The gala announcement went out on business news sites this morning. It mentioned key personnel being promoted. Your name was listed as the new head of analysis. Daniel sat down across from her, his expression softening. I'm sorry. I should have asked your permission before making that public. I just thought, after our conversation, maybe you were ready. Claire's hands covered her face. I never gave you an answer. I never said yes to the promotion. I know. Daniel leaned forward. But I also know quality when I see it. And I refuse to let talent go to waste because of other people's cruelty. You've been exceptional for 10 years, Claire. You deserve recognition. Recognition destroyed my life. The words burst out of her, sharp and bitter. Brandon believed those photos without even asking me. His family's lawyers threatened to ruin me completely if I fought back. My own parents were so mortified they stopped taking my calls. I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my identity, so I became no one. I made myself ugly and invisible, because ugly and invisible is safe. The confession hung in the air between them. Claire waited for judgment, for pity, for the inevitable distance that came when people learned how thoroughly she'd been broken. Instead, Daniel said, You're not ugly. Claire's head snapped up. What? You're not ugly, he repeated, his gray eyes steady on hers. You've spent 10 years trying to convince the world you are, but you're not. I've seen the way you think, the way you solve problems, the compassion you show to the interns who ask you for help when they're too intimidated to approach the senior analysts. I've watched you stay late to check someone else's work when they were struggling, never taking credit. That's not ugly, Claire. That's beautiful. Tears burned behind Claire's eyes. She couldn't remember the last time someone had said something kind to her, really kind, not just polite pleasantries. As for Brandon Sterling, Daniel continued, his voice turning cold, he's not getting near you. I've had my legal team draft a cease and desist letter. If he attempts to contact you or anyone at this company again, we'll pursue harassment charges. You'd do that? Claire whispered. Why? Daniel was quiet for a moment, studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Because I've spent the last 2 weeks watching you hide from the world, and it makes me angry. Not at you. At the people who made you feel like you had to. Because you deserve better than living in fear of your own reflection. He stood and walked to the window, his back to her. And maybe because I know what it's like to be judged for something that isn't true. When my business started growing, the media loved creating stories about me. Said I was ruthless, called me a corporate raider, implied I'd built my fortune on other people's backs. None of it was true, but the narrative stuck. I could have hidden from it, but instead, I just kept working, kept proving them wrong through action rather than argument. He turned back to her. I'm not saying you should do what I did. Everyone's path is different, but I am saying you have a choice now, Claire. Brandon Sterling can't hurt you anymore. The photos have been proven false, and you have people in your corner now, me, for one, who won't let anyone tear you down again. Claire felt something crack inside her, a fissure in the walls she'd built so carefully. I don't know how to be anything other than invisible anymore. Then start small, Daniel said gently. Come to the gala. You don't have to transform overnight. Wear whatever makes you comfortable, but come. Be seen. Take back just a little bit of what was stolen from you. And if I can't? The question came out small, vulnerable. Then I'll respect your decision. The promotion stands either way. You've earned it. But I hope you'll at least consider it. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you're one of the bravest people I've ever met. It takes courage to survive what you survived. It takes even more courage to consider living again. After he left, Claire sat alone in the conference room for a long time. She thought about the woman in the red dress from the photograph, the one who'd laughed and loved and believed the world was good. She thought about the woman she'd become, hiding in oversized sweaters and deliberate ugliness, and she thought about Daniel's words. You have a choice now. That evening, for the first time in 10 years, Claire walked into a department store. She didn't go to the clearance section. She didn't choose the most shapeless, colorless items she could find. Instead, she found herself in front of a dress, simple, elegant, a deep navy blue that reminded her of Twilight. She bought it without trying it on, her hands shaking as she handed over her credit card. At home, she hung it in her closet next to the ugly cardigans and baggy pants. She wasn't ready to wear it yet, but it was there. A promise to herself that maybe, just maybe, she could find her way back to the light. The next morning, Claire did something radical. She wore a sweater that actually fit. It wasn't tight or revealing, but it didn't hang like a sack either. She left her hair down instead of yanked back in a severe bun. She skipped the fake glasses. When she arrived at the office, several people did double takes. Brittany from the elevator actually said, "Oh, you look nice today." And when Daniel saw her across the lobby, the smile that spread across his face made her heart skip in a way that was both terrifying and wonderful. She was starting to live again, and it was all because someone had bothered to look past her disguise and see the person underneath. The night of the gala arrived too quickly. Claire stood in her apartment, staring at her reflection with a mixture of terror and wonder. The navy dress fit perfectly, elegant without being provocative. She'd had her hair professionally styled for the first time in a decade. Soft waves that framed her face, her natural auburn color restored after years of mousy brown dye. Light makeup enhanced her features without hiding them. She looked like herself again, the real herself. Her phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. "Car service is downstairs whenever you're ready. No pressure, but I hope to see you tonight." Claire took a deep breath. She could still back out, change into her old clothes, send her regrets. 10 years of habit screamed at her to hide, to protect herself, to stay invisible. But a newer, smaller voice whispered, "What if Daniel's right? What if you're finally safe?" She grabbed her clutch and left the apartment before she could change her mind. The Grand Meridian Hotel blazed with light. Photographers lined up outside to capture arrivals. Claire's stomach churned as the car pulled up, but she reminded herself these weren't the paparazzi from 10 years ago. This was a corporate event, not a society scandal. The lobby took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, hundreds of people in elegant attire. Claire felt exposed, vulnerable, but she forced herself to keep walking toward the ballroom. "Claire?" She turned to find Daniel approaching, and her breath caught. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo, but it was his expression that stopped her, something between awe and tenderness. "You came," he said softly. Then, even softer, "You're stunning." Claire felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm terrified." "I know." He offered his arm. "But you don't have to be alone. Stay with me tonight. I'll keep you safe." It was a promise, simple and genuine. Claire hesitated only a moment before taking his arm. The ballroom was magnificent, filled with employees, clients, and business partners. Daniel guided her through the crowd, never leaving her side, making introductions with easy confidence. People were friendly, interested in her work rather than gossiping about her appearance. Several senior analysts congratulated her on the promotion, their respect genuine. It was nothing like the society events she'd attended with Brandon, where every interaction felt like a performance, every conversation laced with competition and judgment. This was professional, warm, human. "See?" Daniel murmured as they found their table. "The world hasn't ended. Not yet, Claire replied, but she was smiling. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. Daniel spoke about the company's future with passion and vision, crediting the employees who made everything possible. He specifically mentioned the analysis team, praising their work without singling Claire out, a kindness she appreciated. As dessert arrived, Claire excused herself to the restroom, needing a moment alone to process the evening. She was doing it. She was being seen, being present, and nothing terrible was happening. She was fixing her lipstick when she heard a familiar voice behind her. Well, Claire Morrison. Or should I say Claire Hayes? I wondered if it was really you. Claire's blood turned to ice. She turned slowly to find a woman in a red dress, blonde hair swept up elegantly. It took her a moment to place the face. Vanessa, one of Brandon's cousins, who'd been particularly vicious during the scandal. I'm surprised you'd show your face at an event like this, Vanessa continued, her smile sharp as glass. Though I suppose you've learned to clean up nicely. New billionaire boss, new look. Some patterns never change, do they? The implication was clear and cruel. Claire felt the old shame rising, the instinct to shrink, to flee, to hide. But then she thought of Daniel's words. You're one of the bravest people I've ever met. She thought of 10 years spent invisible, 10 years of letting other people's lies define her, and something inside her broke, not the crack that let in light, but the final shattering of the cage she'd built around herself. You know what, Vanessa? Claire said, her voice steady and clear. I spent 10 years believing I deserved what happened to me, 10 years thinking I had to hide because I'd done something wrong, but I didn't. Your cousin and his friend destroyed my reputation with lies, and people like you helped them do it because it was entertaining. Vanessa's smile faltered. I earned my position at this company through a decade of excellent work, Claire continued. Mr. Reeves promoted me because I'm good at what I do, not because of how I look. And if you have a problem with that, I suggest you take it up with him directly. I'm sure he'd be very interested to hear about your concerns. She turned to leave, but Vanessa grabbed her arm. Brandon's here, she hissed. He's been looking for you all night. He wants to talk to you. Claire pulled her arm free. Then he can join the conversation with Mr. Reeves's legal team. I have nothing to say to him. She walked out with her head high, her heart pounding but her steps steady. In the corridor outside the restroom, she nearly collided with someone, tall, blonde, painfully familiar. Brandon Sterling stood before her, older now, his golden boy look slightly faded. Claire, I need to talk to you. No. The word came out firm and final. Please, just 5 minutes. I need to explain. There's nothing to explain. You chose to believe lies about me without even asking for my side. You let your family's lawyers threaten and intimidate me. You threw me away like I meant nothing. Claire's voice didn't waver. I don't care why you're here or what you want. You have no place in my life anymore. I made a mistake, Brandon said desperately. I found out the truth about Marcus, about the photos. I've regretted it every day for 10 years. When I saw your name in the business news, I thought maybe what? That I'd been waiting for you? That I'd forgive you? Claire shook her head. I spent 10 years rebuilding my life from nothing. I'm not going backward for anyone, especially not for you. She started to walk past him, but his hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. Claire, please. Let her go. Daniel's voice was quiet, but carried unmistakable authority. He stood a few feet away, his expression dangerous. Brandon dropped Claire's wrist immediately. This is a private conversation. It's over, Daniel said, moving to stand beside Claire. And if you touch her again, I'll have security escort you out. Actually, I'll have them escort you out anyway. You weren't invited to this event. I came with the Morrison Group delegation. Who will be informed that their guest violated company policy by harassing an employee? Daniel's gaze was ice cold. You have 30 seconds to leave before I call security. Brandon looked between them, his face flushing with anger and humiliation. I see. Moved on quickly, didn't you, Claire? 10 years pretending to be invisible, but the moment a billionaire shows interest, that's enough. Daniel stepped forward, and something in his posture made Brandon step back. You lost the right to speak about Claire the moment you chose to believe lies instead of trusting her. Now leave. Brandon left, his shoulders tight with fury. Claire stood frozen, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Are you all right? Daniel asked, his voice gentle again. Claire nodded, then shook her head, then laughed, a slightly hysterical sound that turned into something genuine. I just told off Brandon Sterling. After 10 years of hiding from even the possibility of seeing him again, I just told him off. You were magnificent, Daniel said, his eyes warm with pride, and something else, something that made Claire's pulse quicken. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. He offered his hand. Come on, let's get back to the gala. Don't let him ruin your night. But Claire didn't take his hand yet. Daniel, why did you really promote me? And don't say it was just about my work. He was quiet for a moment, considering. It was about your work, but it was also because I've spent 2 weeks trying to convince myself that what I felt when I looked at you was just professional respect, and I can't. He met her eyes directly. I've built an empire by trusting my instincts about people, and my instincts say you're extraordinary, not because you're beautiful, though you are, despite your best efforts to hide it, but because you have integrity, intelligence, and a kindness that survived even when the world was cruel to you. Claire's breath caught. I'm not sure I know how to do this. How to be seen, how to trust someone with me. Then we'll figure it out together, Daniel said simply. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility. He extended his hand again, and this time, Claire took it. They returned to the ballroom together. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversation, dancing, and laughter. Claire met dozens of people who saw her not as a scandal or a threat, but as a colleague, a leader, a person worth knowing. As the night wound down, Daniel walked her to her car. Thank you for coming tonight, he said. I know how much courage it took. Thank you for giving me a reason to try, Claire replied. He hesitated, then leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture that was tender without being presumptuous. Dinner tomorrow? Somewhere quiet, just the two of us. If you're interested, Claire smiled, feeling lighter than she had in a decade. I'm interested. 6 months later, Claire stood in Daniel's penthouse apartment, looking out over the city lights. She wore jeans and a comfortable sweater, not oversized, not ugly, just hers. Her hair fell naturally around her shoulders, her face free of excessive makeup, because she no longer needed armor. Daniel came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? How strange life is, Claire said, leaning back against him. 10 years ago, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never trust anyone again, never let myself be vulnerable again. And now? Now I'm the head of analysis at a major investment firm. I'm dating a man who sees me for who I really am. My parents and I are talking again. Slowly, but it's progress. And I'm not invisible anymore. She turned in his arms. I'm not hiding. You never needed to, Daniel said softly. But I'm glad you feel safe enough not to. I love you, Claire said. The words came easily now, after months of learning to trust again, to believe in good things again. I love you too, Daniel replied, kissing her gently. Ugly clothes and all. Claire laughed, swatting his arm. I never wore them around you again after that first month. I know. I missed the terrible cardigans. They were endearing. They were awful. They were you trying to protect yourself. That was never awful. Claire kissed him again, marveling at the simple miracle of being known, being seen, being loved. She'd spent 10 years convinced that beauty was dangerous, that visibility meant vulnerability, that the only way to survive was to disappear. But she'd learned something better. The right person doesn't just see through your disguises. They make you brave enough to take them off. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. She glanced at it and smiled. It was from a major finance publication, requesting an interview about her innovative analysis methods and her rapid rise to department head. A year ago, she would have declined immediately. 6 months ago, she would have been terrified. Now, she simply replied, I'd be happy to. Claire Morrison was no longer hiding, and the world was better for it.